everybody, welcome back. How exciting is this that we've got our scan and cut classes back up and running. Now this one isn't live, just so that you know, because we've had to switch stuff around this week a little bit, but I'm really glad that you're joining us again, and let's see what we can get done before the end of the year. And talking of the end of the year, we're going to look at Christmas and snowflakes. I had one of our lovely customers, one of you guys, message me and say, I'm trying to make a snowflake frame. How do I do it? So I sat down this morning and went, right, what's the easiest way to do it? And there's a few little tips and hints to give you along the way, because it's a little bit more complicated than you think, actually. The circle one isn't, but the square one is, and we'll go through that as we go through the class. So I'm using the snowflakes, both of them, that are inside the machine's memory. So they're on every single machine that we've ever sold, which is good. Means everybody can do it. And I just thought I would show you how to do this circle wreath, because it's lovely, isn't it? You can make it bigger, you can make it smaller, you could have 2 or 3 together. So I thought we'd start with this one. So the first thing we're going to do on our scan and cut screen is go into our patterns. Please excuse my nails, I've been painting today, can you tell? This is a like a 95% improvement of what they looked like 10 minutes ago, so it's not that bad. Then we're going to go into our images and icons and into the first category. And you can see you've got 3 different styles of snowflake. We're going to use this one. And I'm just going to press OK and keep going and then set it on the mat. And I'm all right with it at that size at the moment. Now, even though this is a pre-installed shape, the scan and cut still sees it as the outside edge with the little diamonds sat on top of it. So the first thing we need to do is send it into Canvas Workspace and divide it so that we can then weld them together. That's the key. Because if you imagine the scan and cuts, let's just talk about these top 3 here. You've got 3 snowflakes with the 6 little diamonds in each one. Now they're welded here at this point, but because this point isn't overlapping these diamonds, if we didn't divide it, it would say that it couldn't weld because of the diamonds that are sat on top. Once you've divided it, it sees it as one shape. So then it just ignores the diamonds and it allows you to weld. So back to the machine, we're going to save, and we're going to save it into the cloud. Now, obviously, if you haven't got a Wi-Fi enabled machine, although if you're watching SDX, they all are, you could put USB into your computer with the file on it. So save was successful. So now we're going to go into Canvas Workspace. So I've opened it up. It looks like there's a few new projects in here since we last saw each other, so it might be worth checking those out. And we're going to go to a new page. So in my projects should be, there we go, the snowflake. I actually had another question about, are the icons that are in the machine in Canvas? No, they're not. The basic shapes are, the fonts are, the welded words are, but the icons aren't. But you can send them in like this as and when you need them. So the first thing we're going to do is go up to Edit at the top, down to Process Overlap at the bottom, and we're going to hover over that second icon, which is Divide, and then just click it. And now, when I move that, it's punched those diamonds that were sat on top through the shape, and now this is just one part. So we're going to drag that across there, put those in the bin, and download this back to our machine. So scan and cut transfer. And so the other really good thing about taking something into Canvas like that is, if you are concerned that some of the pieces are too small and you're not sure, if you send it into Canvas and then download it, it will remove anything that's too small for it to cut. So it's a really good way of just gauging whether you're on the right track size-wise or not. So that's another little tip for you. Right, so to retrieve that, we just press home because we've got the one that we're going to be using. We're going to retrieve it from the cloud, and it will take a couple of seconds just to send it wirelessly. This blows my mind. I don't know how it does that, but it's very clever that it does. And then what we're going to do is make this 40 millimeters. Now, of course, you can make it whatever size you want, but 40 millimeters was quite a nice size to fit on a card front. So Object Edit, Resize button, and take the height down to 40. The width will be different because it's not perfectly symmetrical, but that's all right. and we've got 40 millimeters there. Okay, so I'm going to position this one over here, just about there. I'm going to duplicate it, so I've got 2. So I'm going to press OK, go to duplicate, type number 2 in number, and then I'm going to move this down, and I'm going to move it down 4 squares. So I'm using the grid now on my mat. Now you can have these as close or as far away as you like. However, the closer you get them, the bigger the rotation, the degree of rotation will need to be, because they'll start to separate or overlap too much. So I found that this worked perfectly. So what I would do is make my wreath and then make it bigger or smaller, just because I know then that that I've got the correct starting point. So I've got one there, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 squares, and then my other snowflake, but I don't know whether they're vertically aligned or not. So that's the next bit. So we're going to press OK. We're going to multiple select everything on the mat and press OK. We're going to go to our directional arrow buttons and our alignment function at the top, and we're just going to align it centrally vertically. Okay. And then while we've got them both selected, we'll go into Object Edit and we'll group it together. So this is exactly the same process as I taught you when we talked about making flowers. Don't just think because, you know, if you want a circle wreath, you can even do it with letters. You've got to be quite, you'd have to draw it out for letters. So if you wanted happy and birthday, you'd have to have your opposite letters underneath each other. But it is doable. It takes a bit of working out, but it is doable. So don't ever think that that rotation that I showed you is just for flowers. You can use it with all your shapes, which is super cool. So I know, because I worked it out, that I need 6 of these, and then we're going to rotate at 30-degree increments. So to work it out, I'll just show you this bit again, just in case you've forgotten. So I've put 2 on here. And the first thing I'm going to do is multiple select everything on the mat and press OK. Go back to my directional arrow buttons and my alignment function at the top. And this time we're going to align them centrally vertically and centrally horizontally. We're going to press OK and we're going to tap the screen to release that shape. So the next thing I did was go to Object Edit and go up to Rotate. Now, no matter how many shapes you've got, you need to be able to divide the rotation number into 180, and it needs to be equal. So if you've got something that's 35, that won't work. So you need to make sure that whatever the number of the degree of rotation is, it's divisible into 180, because that's half a semicircle. So what I did was I did 10, 20, and 30. And then I pressed OK, and again, OK again, and zoomed in and made sure that just those 2 little points of that snowflake there are overlapping. If they weren't, if they were too far apart or they were too close together, well, too close together doesn't really matter, but too far apart does, because then you can't overlap them and weld them. All you would do is either change the size of your snowflake or make the whole thing taller or shorter. Okay, so now I've got that bit, I'm just going to bin that one so we can start afresh. So I've got 1, but I want 6. Now it always takes into consideration the one that's selected. So we're going to go to Object Edit, into our quantity, and I'm going to type 6. Okay, so it puts them all in a diagonal line like that. So the next thing we do is multiple select everything on the mat, press OK. Alignment function at the top, centrally vertically, centrally horizontally, press OK, and then remember to tap the screen to release the shapes. When you tap the screen, it looks like nothing's happened, but it has. It just doesn't, you just can't see that it has. So now we press OK again. So Object Edit now, let's rotate. So the first one is going to be 10, 20, 30. I'm then going to press OK, and I like to do it this way because I know that I'm accurate then. Press OK again, use these arrows to get to the next vertical set, and then repeat. But this time you're going to do 60. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. If you're unsure, it will tell you at the top, okay? So then we press OK again, and then we go to our next available set. This time it's going to be 90 degrees. So this time we can just use the 90 degree setting there. Press OK twice. Next vertical set, object edit, rotate, 90, 100, 110, 120. Okay, so I've now got that, which is lovely. Then I'm going to press OK, go to the last vertical set, and this time we'll rotate anti-clockwise. So we'll go 10, 20, 30. And remember, the number at the top, when you're going anti-clockwise, will subtract from a 360 degree starting point. When you go clockwise, it starts at 0. When you go anti-clockwise, it subtracts from 360. So now you've got your circle of snowflakes. So we're going to press OK, and then we're going to multiple select everything that's on the mat, press OK, go to Object Edit and weld it together. And that will give you your perfect snowflake. Now that, I think, is lovely. So we press OK, then you can make that bigger, you can make it smaller, you could have two within another one, you could have these as doilies, little place settings on your Christmas table for the wine glass to go inside of, just those extra decorative elements. So that's how you make a circle one, exactly the same as you would make a flower, but using one of the shapes. So it could be a love heart, it could be, I don't know, something else, clouds, stars, whatever you want it to be. You just need to work out that degree of rotation and make sure that it's divisible into 180. So that's your circle one, which I thought was quite cool. I really like that. I think it's really pretty. The next one is a little bit more complex because of the way that the snowflake is formed. So this is done with the other snowflake that's in the machine's memory. And it's a little bit, it's not perfectly symmetrical in that I haven't made sure that I lined everything up perfectly, because actually snowflakes, as they fall, like, this is my thought process, going lots of different directions. They're all individual, and I just thought that this was a nice way of having a little bit of random in there, but not too much random. Okay, so the issue I came across when I did in fact, I'm going to retrieve it if I saved it, when I was trying to do a square frame, was that got loads of stuff on this right now. I don't know if I saved it yesterday or not. Maybe I didn't. Yes, I did. So here, if I just press OK and zoom in. So this was my first attempt, and I didn't think it through properly because this is with the same snowflake. I've done it this morning with a different snowflake. So when if you look at this snowflake and the direction that these little fronds are pointing in, you've got two at the top and one at the sides here. So you can join that together and that together and that together, and that works as the top and the bottom. However, when you come to do the sides, because you're changing the direction of the snowflake, because you need a point to weld, you've got the two here. So if I just come out, it might make it a little bit easier. You can see here, the distance between these looks greater than the distance between that. It looks squashed. So we couldn't do it that way, because even if I had the row at the top and then I rotated the snowflake slightly, so if I rotated it so I had the single one here, I've nothing to weld it to there, and it's still squashed. So it's okay for making a rectangle, but it does look a little bit strange. So last night when I got back to the house, I was sitting there and thinking, right, how do I do this? And then it came into my head, you make a frame first. So we make a frame from two squares, and then we weld the snowflakes on top of the frame. So that's why you will see this little frame that goes all the way round here. Okay, now you could do that with your circles as well if you wanted to, and have a proper frame coming through the middle. If that's something that you think you'd like to do, absolutely you can do that. So let's start with the frame first of all. So we're going to go into our basic shapes, into the square. So we want our square, and I'm going to set that on the mat. And then I'm going to go to Edit, Object Edit, and resize, and I'm going to make the square 175 millimeters because I thought it would be nice to fit on a 8x8 card. But again, whatever size you want it to be. That's the joy of having a scan and cut, obviously within the parameters of the mat size. So I've got 175mm square. I need 2 of them now. So number 2, press OK. And I'm going to reduce that down to 169mm, which will give me a 3mm width of the actual frame itself. Okay, so I'm going to reduce that down. Remember, when you're reducing something down to go inside another shape, you need to double the width of the frame that you're creating. So you've got 3mm on the left and 3mm on the right. Okay, if you want to reduce it by 3mm, you'll have 1.5mm on either side, and that would be a bit flimsy. So we're going to press OK twice, and then we're going to multiple select everything that's on the mat and press OK. Directional arrows, alignment, and align centrally vertically, centrally horizontally, and press OK. Now I'm going to save this into Canvas Workspace and divide this because I need it as a frame, not as 2 squares. So I'm going to press OK and save into the cloud or onto a USB if you don't want to use your Wi-Fi. And then when I go into Canvas here, let's get rid of what we did before. So let's delete that, put that in the bin. Now, because Canvas is now open when we've sent something in, we need to refresh it to get that file. If you save something and then open Canvas, it's automatically there. If you do it and then you send it to Canvas while Canvas is already opened, you need to refresh. So both of those squares now are selected. So all I need to do is go to Edit, back down to Process Overlap like we did before, and divide it. And then that square is a spare, and then my frame is 1 piece. That's exactly what we want. So let's put that into the bin and let's download this. Now you could do this in Canvas. I've been talking to a few people recently who said they like working in Canvas and then sending it down to the machine. I get that because you're working on a bigger screen. That's why people are doing it, because they like being able to work on a laptop or a computer screen, which I think is a good idea. However, the thing that I don't like is the fact that I haven't got an arrangement function that puts everything in a straight line. That's the bit that I don't like necessarily about working in Canvas, because it doesn't have that arrangement function. We've actually got a meeting with Brother in this month, so I'm going to ask them if that's something that they can do. I'm not holding my breath because it usually takes them quite a long time, but you never know. Right, so now I'm going to download this back to my machine and just press close. Right, so we're done in Canvas now. So now press OK, home, and OK. We're going to retrieve from the cloud. There we go, and there's our frame. So now we're going to add, and we're going to add our, let's go to patterns, and into our images and icons, and onto our different snowflake. You can do it with either, it doesn't matter. You don't need to think about, do I need this, do I need that? Just whichever one you prefer. The only thing you need to think about is if there is an aperture in the middle, you need to divide it first. So we're going to set this on the mat. Okay, so I've got a snowflake. So let's see how big we want this to be. I want it to be a decent size, but I don't want it to be too small. So let's try that and see what that looks like. So I'm going to move this over here. And this is where the randomness of it really starts to come in, because I thought, do I start aligning everything? And I thought, no, because actually snowflakes are quite random in their form, aren't they? So I quite liked the idea of this. So just to show you where I've positioned it, I'll zoom right in for you. You can see what I've done is try to get that, I'm just going to nudge it over a little bit and try and get that corner kind of central with the snowflake. Okay, like that maybe a little bit higher. Excuse me. I'll tell you, nothing's changed over the summer. I've still got this tickle off when I talk too much. Right, so let's go to Object, Edit, and Duplicate it, and do 2, and OK. And then I'm going to drag this one over here, and I'm going to position that more or less in the center as well. Okay, so let's zoom in and have a look. Scroll across using your arrows on your machine. And I think that needs to go over a little bit further over there, and maybe down a couple as well. Up a couple rather than down, Melanie. Right, now then, next bit, I'm going to do a little bit different to what I did this morning. I'm going to make sure that these are level. So we're going to multiple select part of the mat. I'm going to drag over the frame, press OK, and again, go to my alignment and make sure that those two snowflakes are aligned at either the bottom or the top. So I know that at least if the snowflakes aren't perfectly symmetrically lined up, they're at least level at the top and the bottom. Okay, so while I've got those two selected, I might as well press Object Edit and group them, and then duplicate that, so I've got two, and move that down to the bottom, rather than doing all the four corners. So when I'm designing something like this, what I'll do is I will go the long way round and then I'll go back and do it again and make shortcuts, because I think it's important. In my head, I have to go through that process. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. I have to go through the long way round. It's like, you know, when you're driving somewhere where you haven't been before, and you go where your sat nav takes you, and then as you get more used to the area, you make a shortcut down a little ginnel. That's kind of my analogy for this. So I'm looking at those two there. I'm going to go back up to the top and, oh, wrong one, Melanie. I always do that. Do you do that as well? I always do it. Get the wrong arrows in the wrong direction. I always try and use these rather than that. All the time, doesn't matter how long I've used my machine, still do it. So I'm going to scroll up like that. Lovely. And I can see here that this part here is kind of in the middle, that the frame is kind of in the middle of that piece there. So the best thing to do now, because we can't do the alignment anymore because we can't get to this frame. Let me show you what I mean, it's easier. If I go multiple selecting part of the mat, I have to go over those snowflakes, which I don't want to do. So I can't align these two rows of snowflakes because I can't get into that frame to make the machine ignore it. So we just have to do that bit by eye. All right, so we've now got our four pieces here. Okay, so while we've got that, let's just come out of there and tap the screen to release them. So what I'm going to do now, because I need another snowflake, is just ungroup everything. So I'm going to ungroup that, tap the screen, click up here, ungroup that, and tap the screen. And then I can get to here. If you remembered what size you did the snowflake, you can just bring another one on at the right size. But Madam here didn't make a note of that, did she? So therefore, we have to do it this way. I always think I'll remember, and then within seconds I've forgotten. It's really bad. It's properly bad. Right, so the other thing we could do now is, see, I'm now thinking about a different way now I'm teaching you this. So what we could do is, let me think about this. No, because I want to rotate them slightly. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring on this one, and I'm just going to duplicate this a few times. So I'm going to give myself 6, and I'm going to move these just over here. Okay, so I now know I've got some snowflakes to be working with. So I'm going to position one of these. If I wanted them straight, I could just use this row and pull them down and then rotate it and use it the other way around. But I'm not doing that because I want to rotate these slightly. I want it to be slightly offset. So I can have one like that, which I quite like. So I press OK, and then I'm just going to nudge that up a little bit further because I can see that that's not quite central. So I'm quite happy with that. So I'm looking at this distance from here to here and there to there. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So what I want to do now is duplicate that one. So do 2. And this time I'm going to flip that, and I'm going to move that one over here. And again, I'm not worrying about it being perfectly central. I'm looking at that frame and seeing where it goes through the middle of the snowflake. In fact, I'm going to zoom in because that will make it a lot easier. So if I just click on that one and just nudge that over slightly, or in, no, maybe in one, and then this one and move that over slightly, I can see now that I've got my snowflakes, one facing slightly in and one facing slightly in. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Right, so that's those two bits done. Now I'm going to put another one up here, and you could at any point change the sizes of these. So I'm going to rotate this one in the opposite direction. So let's go 10 degrees that way this time. So let's zoom in again. So there's a little bit of work to do with this. However, once you've done it once, you don't need to do it again because you save it. That's the great thing about it. And you're creating your own frame. So you know what? Sometimes you have to put a little bit of effort in, and that's all right. So I'm going to duplicate this one now. So Object, Duplicate, 2, flip it, and move it over to the other side. And you're just going to work your way around the frame. So let's zoom in like this, make sure that I'm happy with that positioning. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit so that I can see. Now I can see that that's overlapping there. So I need to move it further over like that. Let's see what the other side looks like, because that one's overlapping. See, that one's not overlapping. So that tells me that this central one here is higher up than that one. So I'm going to nudge that down because otherwise it would have fit. So it's all these little things that you think about as you're doing it. So if I zoom back in again now, and I'm going to zoom right into 400% because that makes it even easier. I'm going to nudge that up slightly, scroll down, and then just pop it down one more space. Right, so I'm happy with that one now as well. So I've got that. So now let's bring in another one. And let's rotate this a little bit further. So Object, Edit, and Rotate. And let's do this one 20 degrees this time. So it's the same snowflake, but you're just moving it about. And you can make these, like I said, you can make these smaller, you can make them bigger, you can make it fit your project. But this was the way that I found today. Tonight, might think of something completely different, knowing me, and come back and go, oh, actually, you know what? If you do it this way, it's a bit quicker. But for now, I always think it's worth learning the proper way before you start doing shortcuts. Because if you're coming on shortcuts, it's like learning to drive a manual car before you drive an automatic. You can always go back to a manual car then, whereas if you're learning an automatic, you can't. So it's I'm a bit like that. That's my dad, that. Always do a proper job, Melanie, and then you can take your shortcuts when you're ready. Can you hear him now? So I'm going to flip that, and then I'm going to bring this over here. And again, we're going to zoom in, and we're going to take our time, and we're going to make this fabulous frame. So let's scroll down like that, and I'm going to nudge that up a little bit because I've got that space now. Okay, so perfect, happy with that. All right, so you could just have it like that if you wanted to. So a thin frame across the top and bottom and your snowflakes down the side. That would actually look really nice. You could just have the snowflakes down the side with the square. Start thinking outside of the box a little bit. Right, I don't need these anymore, so I'm going to put these in the bin to start with. And that one in the bin. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do now is group these three and these three together. Okay, so the middle three. So I'm going to multiple select part of the mat. I'm going to drag this up here like that, and make sure you go over the frame, because remember those corners aren't grouped to the frame anymore. And then drag down over the frame and over the snowflakes here. And then when I press OK, I've got all 6 there. So I'm going to press OK, Object, Edit, and Group. Then I'm going to duplicate it, so I've got 2. And I'm going to rotate one 90 degrees. That's it. And now I've got my 3 for my top and bottom. So all we're going to do is zoom in and make sure that we're lined up where we want them to be. So I'm going to nudge that down a little bit further, and then I'm going to scroll down like that, and then I'm going to go across and see where I need to go. So I need to come further over here like this because I've got more space here than I had on the other side. And then I'm going to scroll back the other way, go back up, always check top, bottom, left, right. There you go. And then final check is this bit here. Now there, that's a little bit further over. So now all we need to do is multiple select everything on the mat, press OK, go to Object Edit and Weld. And because we've got that thin square frame, the snowflakes don't need to overlap because they're welding onto that frame. And that's when I suddenly thought this, and I thought it last night as I was falling asleep. And I thought, I'm never going to remember that when I wake up in the morning. I'll be thinking, what did I think I was going to do? So I actually got up and wrote it down in my phone because I was like, there's no way you'll remember that, Melanie. By the time you wake up, you'll drive yourself crazy all day. So now what we've got is our fabulous frame. And again, you can make this smaller and you can make it bigger. And I quite like the fact that it's a little bit higgledy-piggledy. If you don't like that, then you can be much more precise, nudging them up and down. But actually, when you've cut it out and it looks like this, you don't really notice that they're not all level. And it gives it, and this isn't me making an excuse up now, I promise you. If it was, I'd tell you. This is when you've got something that's not perfectly symmetrical and lined up perfectly, because it kind of undulates like that, it adds movement to the project, which I think is really cool. Now, I was thinking about this as well. If you wanted to put a little circle, have a little circle cut out of your snowflakes, you would align the circle first into the middle of your snowflake on your screen, but then make sure that you take it into canvas and divide it. Because then what you could do is thread ribbon through as well. So you still have to have your card frame, but you could then start to thread ribbon through, which would look really, really pretty. So those are the two things that I wanted really to show you in this class, but there's something else that I want to show you, and it's the holly. Now, we did a class a while ago called Made from the Memory. We say we, I mean the girls at Highlight Crafts. And we did the Christmas house, and we did a whole retreat over a weekend, and people came. And it was really interesting because I'd spent probably about 3 or 4 days working all the files out, because you made all the files for the whole project from the shapes that are inside the machine's memory. There was no SVG cutting files at all. So I spent 2 or 3 days doing that, and then I wrote everything out, and then I created the files and put them on a USB for everybody. And when they came, I was expecting some people to want to learn how to make the files and some people wanting to go away with the house completed. Well, I was very wrong. Everybody that came on that class, on both of them that we've done, because we've done it twice, wanted to learn how to do the files, which was really interesting. And I was actually really pleased because it means that you're ready to go on to that next level. So with that in mind, I needed to create a holly leaf. And there is a holly leaf in some of the machines, but not in others. Some of them have it on a sprig, but it's not on another one. Some of them have got like 3 as a cluster with the little berries. But I just wanted an individual holly leaf. So this is how I did it. And I'm actually really proud of this. I don't say that very often, but I am actually proud of it because it pushed me to think differently as well, which is super cool. So let's get rid of that. So we're going to start with 3 ovals. All right. So we're going to go into our pattern and into our basic shapes. And there's only 1 oval in here. So you just choose the 1 oval. And we're going to set it on the mat. First thing I'm going to do is go to Edit and Object Edit, and I'm going to rotate it by 90 degrees. Okay, so it's taller rather than wider. And I'm going to resize it to 60 millimeters high. But I actually want it to be 50 millimeters wide because what I need is more of a curve here. I need that to be accentuated a little bit more, so that curve. So by making it 5 mil wider, and stretching it out of its normal proportion, it gives me more of a curve. The original one was more like an egg shape. I need it to be a little bit wider. It doesn't work the same with the circle, just in case you're wondering, because I tried that first of all. It needs to be an oval, I think, for the shape of holly that I wanted. So I'm going to move it over here into the top left corner, and I'm going to press OK, and I want 3 of them. So I'm going to do 2, 3, press OK, and then move these over to the left-hand side as well. And now we're going to zoom in. So we're going to zoom in, and I want to make sure that this oval at the bottom here is just touching the one at the top. So I'm just going to nudge it up. And remember, each one of these nudges is 0.5 millimetre on an SDX machine. That bit of information is invaluable when you start to really get to grips with making your own shapes. Absolutely invaluable. So I'm going to drag this one up, the one at the bottom, and I'm going to make sure that that's just touching too. So just about there. Okay, so I've now got my 3 ovals directly in a row underneath each other, and now we're going to start to make the holly. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the top one and go to edit. In fact, what I'm going to do first of all is just move these over slightly. So multiple select everything on the mat and press OK. You don't need to group them. You can just drag it over like that and then tap the screen to release the shapes. So I want this one. I'm going to go to Object, Edit, and I'm going to rotate it clockwise 30 degrees. Okay. And then I'm going to go to the bottom one and I'm going to rotate that anti-clockwise 30 degrees, 10, 20, 30. Okay, so I've now got my ovals. I know it sounds strange, and it was very funny in the class because some people, because I wrote out the instructions, some people read them and some people didn't. And I got, this doesn't look anything like holly. I thought, well, they definitely haven't followed the instructions, and it was quite funny. And then all of a sudden I get, there's the holly. I was like, yes, I know. So back to this now. So we're going to go back to the top one, and we're going to move that over to the right 30 spaces. Okay. So this is where we have to do a bit of counting. So I'm going to click on my directional arrow buttons and count to 30. There you go, 30. Okay. Then I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the bottom one. Now, if you're sitting at home and thinking, why does she not just align the top one and the bottom one? Because I can't get over that middle one when they're in a straight line. So I've now got these shapes here. Now we need to move them down, okay? Because I need these now to overlap that middle one. So I'm going to move this one up 7 spaces. In fact, I'm going to do it 8 just to make sure that it overlaps properly. And then that one down 8. Okay, so I've now got that shape. So I'm going to press OK. I'm going to multiple select everything on the mat, press OK, go to Object, Edit, and weld it together. Okay, so I've now got this strange looking thing. It looks like my mum, that's just taken me right back that. My mum putting onions inside tights and tying them in between to string them up in the kitchen when we dug them out of the allotment at the garden. That's just taken me right back because it does look a bit like that. Right, so we now need 2 of these. So we're going to go to this one, number 2, press OK. We're going to flip it and we're going to go back into that top corner again. So I'm just going to drag this over here and I'm going to zoom in to 400%. And all I'm looking at is this bit here, and I'm going to nudge it so that it just overlaps like that. And I'm going to press OK. Now we're going to multiple select everything on the mat, press OK, go back to Object, Edit, and weld it together. Okay, So I'm happy with that. Still looks weird, right? So now what I'm going to do is press OK, and we're going to save this into the cloud. This is where I get a little bit giddy. Right, ready? Back to canvas. So I need to, let's get rid of this frame first of all. Come on, there we go. Let's put that in the bin. Let's refresh because we already had canvas open. And there's our funny looking onions. There we go. Now, because you've created now a shape within a shape, when you go to edit and divide, it's going to punch that inside through. And there is your holly leaf. I was really happy when I worked that out. So what I was looking for, why did I choose the shape that I chose? An oval has, this is the bit that I wanted. I wanted this curve here. And I needed the curve there, which is where we rotated it, the curve there, and then the curve there. And once you've got that bit, then you just do what we've just done. If it was a circle, this point came too far out like that, and it made a very tall, skinny holly, which is, if that's what you want, absolutely fabulous. But don't forget, you can now stretch this out. So if you want a wider holly or you want a narrower holly, you know, all of this you can absolutely go ahead and do now, and you've just got that shape from inside here. So now what we're doing is creating shapes that create another shape. And as long as it's got that like landlocked area in the middle, absolutely you can make all sorts. You could probably do a Christmas tree like that as well. So what you'd have to do is have the oval going the other way to come back here. That will be a little bit more tricky, but it will be doable. And that's the great thing about having Canvas Workspace, because otherwise we couldn't do that. If we couldn't divide and punch that bit through there, we wouldn't be able to make the holly leaf. But because we can, and this is why I would absolutely get everybody to go into Canvas Workspace, because it's brilliant. It takes what you can do on your machine to a different place. And I love that, but it's not complicated to use. So I hope you've enjoyed that class. Please let me know if there's anything specific that you want to see, because this class came about because a lovely lady contacted me and said, please can you show me how to make a snowflake wreath? And then on the back of that, thought, well, if we're doing snowflakes, we might as well do holly. Something else that I worked out as well, I'm just sorry, I was going to say goodbye to you then, I've changed my mind, is this was quite cool. So if I just go into basic shapes in here and I find the circle, and I want 2 of those, so I'm going to edit and duplicate it, and I'm going to make one slightly smaller. I'm just going to do it randomly now because I am. There's no reason, I just am. Drag across both of them, go to edit and align them centrally vertically, edit and align centrally horizontally, edit and divide. I've now got a circle frame, so I can get rid of that. So now, for example, you might want to just think about adding more shapes to shapes. So if I just go to edit and double click that will give me 3 of those. Melanie, patience, love, patience. There we go. And I can have one there. I could have another one slightly offset there, and I could have another one. Not very good with the mouse, in case you hadn't noticed. Another one maybe there, like that. Okay, so I can drag around those. I can go to edit and I can weld those like that. So I've now got this funky frame. Now I could go in and I could bring on a triangle, and I could have that there like that. And then I could move that up a little bit more. And then I could bring on a little square over here. Let's make that much smaller, like that. And you could then weld that to that, because now everything's overlapping. So if we weld that, let's see whether I need to divide it. There you go. So you've now got your Christmas. So that could be your Christmas card with your little Christmas tree on the front. Your sentiment could be in there. But how many times have we seen dies that look like this? You know, where they've got all these different frames, and you know, you're paying for that metal. You can do it yourself. Don't think that, you know, you've got all these shapes at your fingertips. Start looking at things differently. Start looking at them as shapes, or looking at the thing and breaking it down into shapes. And you'll be amazed at how quickly, I mean, this is how somebody would design for a die. You know, it's no different. You can do that. You can have that facility literally in the comfort of your own home. Right, so I'm really glad that we're back. I'm going to plan something for next month. I have no idea what we're going to do yet, but please feel free to email me, mel@highlightcrafts, with an S on the end, .com. Anything that you want me to work out for you, anything you'd like me to see done, absolutely, that's what we're here for. So have a lovely month. Go and have a play around in Canvas Workspace. Make your holly leaf and your snowflake frames, and I will see you very soon. Take care. Lots of love. Bye. If you want to see more from Highlight Crafts, make sure you click the like button. Subscribe by clicking the subscribe button below, and click the bell icon to receive notifications of all our future content. You can also click here to see our latest video, or click here to see more videos like this one.